Welcome to the T-Pac Arcade. Today's game is Darius Force for the Nintendo Super Famicom. In this 1993 shoot-'em-up from Taito, after thousands of years of peace, the intergalactic commonwealth originating from planet Darius is being invaded. Luckily, they kept a bunch of tricked-out Silverhawk spaceships around just in case. And you're piloting one of them to fly around asteroid belts and space factories and aquatic caverns, trying to blow up all kinds of prehistoric robots. Mostly fish robots, because that's sorta Darius's thing. Which is awesome. I've never liked real-life fishing because I get bored so easily, but video games where you beam mech squids with lasers is my kind of fishing. The stages themselves are relatively brief gauntlets of turrets and enemy waves and the occasional environmental hazard, like crushing gates or dirt barriers. Some levels even stop and rotate to send you in different directions every once in a while. And it's all designed in a pretty unique way that forces you into the center of the screen, contrary to typical shoot-'em-up gameplay where you tend to hang back along the far edge. This took me a while to adapt to, since hovering around center screen feels like the video game equivalent of standing in the middle of a crosswalk on a busy street. And yet, it's often the safest place here, because so many enemies fly in from behind and loop around the edges of the playfield. You've got a few solid defenses though. Darius offers two main power-ups, blue and red. Blue gives you a shield, which is borderline indispensable. I mean, there are never a ton of bullets on screen here, but they're always so fast and really hard to dodge for some reason. And red is a cannon power-up that upgrades your shot to an angled blaster, a wave beam, or lasers, depending on which ship you're using. Because Darius Force lets you choose from 3 different Silverhawks, modeled after earlier entries in the series. I picked the second one because it had homing missiles as the main secondary weapon, and the less I have to aim myself, the better. The secondary weapons are one of the most novel aspects of the game, because you can switch between bombs or spread lasers, and firing these at the same time as your cannon increases your range, but downgrades the firepower of your main weapon. It's a delicate balance, like a fisherman missing a few catches by casting out a bunch of lines instead of focusing on just one. And sometimes, it's best to just move to a more agreeable pond, which brings me to the other novel aspect of Darius Force. You can choose your own path to the end, through a bunch of different selectable levels, A, B, C, all the way to O. There are even 3 different endings, depending on where your route takes you. My favorite was the cheesy Zone End finale, which plays a loop of a majestic flying dove overlaid with text that says, "Deep inside every human heart is the longing for peace. If you believe this, then it must be so." So touching, I almost shed a tear. Almost. But the definitive ending is Zone O, because that one actually rolls the game credits after you beat it. Even still, I made sure to beat all the endings for good measure. Not without help though. I'm comically bad at every Darius game I've ever played, so I used all the crutches at my disposal. Save states, easy mode, extra lives, the whole deal. Especially because the difficulty curve is all over the place here. Some levels are a breeze, while others spell certain death at every turn. Same with the bosses. I mean, the final robot skeleton, which is supposedly the supreme big bad guy, had a phase I could literally beat by just hovering in place and holding the fire button. Whereas that random whale boss from earlier in the game was one of the hardest, most drawn-out fights I've ever encountered. Why does this whale have like 3,000 different cannons protruding from every fin? That's just not fair. The bosses were my favorite part of the game though, and a highlight of the already fantastic visuals in Darius Force. Aside from a few reused ones here and there, the boss graphics were also distinct, and elaborate and well detailed, to the point that the early robot lizards and robot squids were just as cool looking as the ultimate bosses at the end, like the Mecha Plesiosaurus and Pterodactyl. I have to admit the skeleton one was the coolest though, even if it felt a bit out of place next to all the robot dinosaurs and fish. Imagine fishing for trout and pulling out a scuba diving hamster or something. It's not what you were expecting, but you certainly won't be mad about it. And the soundscape of Darius Force is excellent too. I normally don't notice background music much while I'm playing a game, but the tunes here were so good they caught my attention all the time. And I love that weird muffled elephant roar sound that every boss makes when you blow it up, whether it's a mechanical snail or a sentient laser shooting an enemy. If I could change one thing about this game, I'd utilize that random special bonus weapon a bit better. Every once in a while you get a screen-clearing bomb or a massive temporary soul beam, but it always seems to show up when you don't actually need it. Don't get me wrong, blowing up the entire playfield is awesome, but when there are no enemies around, it's not very satisfying, or very useful. Overall, Darius Force helped me overcome my stigma against the series. Sure, Darius games are still super difficult for me, but now I know they're worth the effort, because fishing with robots and lasers is my kind of fun.